Hi there, welcome to Ms. Cooper's art class. Today I'm going to show you how to paint with washable markers using hands because I think that's an expressive way to do it. You'll need a couple things. You'll need a pencil, just some good old printer paper, although you can use something nicer if you'd like. A good old paintbrush. I'm using a Royal and Langnickel paintbrush, just a basic one, and a washable marker. I'm using kind of a new one. You'll need some water to activate the marker and a little bit of paper towel just in case you make a mess or in case you need to clean off the brush. To work with marker, what you need to do is add some to your paper and then get your brush wet. Mine is just a little bit shiny with water. And then add some water. Now you'll notice here I'm adding a little too much, but you can see that color pulling out from the marker and it's actually rather blue. The paper did pull up a little bit because I used too much here though, and it even bled through my paper and left a little trail on my table that I had to wipe up. So be sure to use a little bit less water and maybe even blot some of that water off on your paper towel before you add it to your marker. And that will help you to keep your line work just a little more crisp, but still get those beautiful values drawn out from your line work. So let's zoom all the way out and look at these hands. So when we think about a hand, and I have my reference photo up here as well, so I'll be working from this, but this is my hand, so I can show you on here too. So I'll make this look kind of like my hand right here. So you can see that there is a dark shadow in here that I would want to show when I'm drawing my hand. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to outline my outline in marker. And if you're wondering how I got this outline in the first place, I just traced it off my iPad because I was running low on time when I was making this video. So if you're doing something like a contour line exercise for school or something else like that, and you want to draw your hand fully by hand, that's super awesome and I love that, and that's a really good way to get good at observational drawing. That is kind of how I had my breakthrough in high school. But what we're going to do is we're going to add some line work. We're going to get our brush wet, but only a little bit wet. So before I put it on the paper, I'm going to blot it off a little bit. I'm going to let some of that water go. Then I'm going to go over my line and pull it out just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is you can see how I'm starting to darken this area a little bit and pull in those wrinkles. I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow because my line is bleeding just enough that I can kind of add a little bit of a shadow. So I'm almost scribbling with my paintbrush, and you can see it's very subtle. It's kind of blue, it's not doing a whole lot, but I can take that line and pull it out and let this middle area get a little bit darker. And I wouldn't do this to all of the skin, but I am going to do it in those middle areas of my hand. It might look like I used a lot of water, but I was actually very careful not to get my brush too wet and just slowly draw out the values. Let's add a little bit more water over here. I think I can do a little bit more water. I'm going to add a little more of a shadow to the side of my thumb here. I think this area should be a little bit darker. But now any area that's wet, I'm going to stop working with for now, because what you want to remember is you can always add more. So I'm going to move on to some different areas and try outlining those. And let's see what that looks like once I've outlined them. Okay, so I've added an outline to the rest of my hand. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's look a little bit closer at my fingers. To do the insides of my fingers, I made sure I blotted off any excess water, and then I continued to paint my hand, starting with the areas where I would have the most shadows. You'll notice on the tops of the fingers, I didn't really draw out the values that much or pull the marker along the paper. But on the undersides of my fingers, I focused a lot more on pulling that marker out into the rest of the paper. If you're wondering why I did my fingernails, it's because I had polish on them, so that made the most sense for me. So please just make sure that you're always focusing on where your shadows are. When you use this technique, it's a little easy to be expressive without considering value or shadows in there. Now in some areas I scribbled some extra marker on the paper and activated that, so I kind of had a little bit of a pool of paint to pull from for some of those darker values. So that's a good way to get some small shadows and other little expressive lines and creases without necessarily going super dark and making it feel like you've outlined the whole thing. So if you want it to look a little less like a cartoon, you could always just kind of paint with the marker from a separate area instead to get all those beautiful little wrinkles and subtle lines. But let's see what the rest of this looks like as we add some value to the wrist. I think it looks fairly subtle as the value is added. All right, so at this point, I think I've finished this hand and gotten it to where I want it to be. So what you'll notice is it does have some shadows, especially right in here. And I did the thing where, I kind of pull some marker from another area and paint it on over here. Now, so those are some really good positives that we might be noticing. And some other positives are, some of these wrinkles up here and the way some areas have shadows, but not the whole thing, where I was able to keep it lighter over here. Now, there are some things that are a little more challenging about this. What you'll notice is some areas are bleeding just a little bit more. The solution to that would be to go back in with your marker when it's dry and then, kind of crisp those up just a little bit. And we can be very careful with the marker just to do some really nice thin lines. So just go really thin with it. So that's how you solve that. Now, the other thing you might notice is that your paper bubbles a little bit. So if you're looking to avoid that, you would use a different type of paper. Now for me, I do this as more kind of a creative exercise, so I don't really care about my paper being in great condition when I'm done. I'm okay if it's just a little bit messed up. So in my case, that's not too much of a worry, and it's not, bubbling so much that the water's pooling or anything. You can't really see it bubbling that much. What I would like to do is just show you one other hand, and I'll kind of talk you through that process, just so you can kind of see a faster version of what I just did. So this is my hand making a peace sign. I started by adding an outline, and you can see I let the outline skip in just a couple places because I was being really light and really gentle with the marker so my line work wouldn't be overwhelming and we could focus on the paint. I made sure to, pay attention to my shadows, leave some white spaces in my hand, and make sure the shadows mostly just lined up with one side of a line or another. So like on the top of my thumb, the shadow goes out and up because that's where the crease of my hand is. And I made sure to leave a lot of white spaces in the middle of my thumb because where it rounds out, it just is a lot lighter. And I painted some of the marker on without using the outlines. You can see where I scribbled on the paper off to the side. I was very happy with this one when it was finished because it has all those little tiny lines and a range of value. All right, and at this point, I think I feel pretty done with this hand. I made sure that my shadows are just a little bit deeper on one side of the finger than the other, and you'll notice I was very careful with my shadows here. And I was also careful to include some white spaces where I didn't have a shadow. The other thing you'll notice is that I pulled some marker from over here to paint with and add some smaller, more subtle wrinkles. I would encourage you to give this a try for sure, and remember, you can always trace a picture at first. If you don't want to focus on the drawing and you just want to focus on the marker, by all means, just trace something. It is okay to trace. That's how we learn some things. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If this was helpful, please give it a like. If you'd like to tell me how yours went or ask a question, please leave a comment and subscribe for more. I'd love to do more washable marker videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making art.